Welcome to the Happiness PhD with Jackson Kirchis. And in this video, you're going to get another set of science-based tools to help you cultivate happiness in work and life. In this video specifically about habits or implementation or really following through on behavior. Because what I see in talking to people and just observing is one of the biggest challenges is like we often know intellectually what's going to make us happier, right? It's like, I want to sleep more. I want to get better work-life balance. I want to exercise more. But then when it comes to actually doing it, well, that's a little bit more difficult. And that's important to point out. Is it's not just me saying that. It's not just a you experience. Laurie Santos is a professor at Yale who teaches probably the world's most popular course on the science of happiness. She calls it the science of well-being. It's got 4.5 million students last time I checked. And very early on in that course, she talks about something called the G.I. Joe fallacy. If you know the cartoon G.I. Joe, the motto of the main character was always, knowing is half the battle. And she's like, no, it's not. If knowing were half the battle, right, I pretty much know how to get a six-pack abs and how to make $1 million and, all these things I want to do. But, unfortunately for a lot of us, we don't have those things. And it's simply because knowing intellectually what we should do or what we want to do is kind of the easy part. That's the first 5%. And then the other 95% is the actual implementation and particularly consistent implementation. And so that's where habits come in. And on this video, I'll kind of tease out how to engineer better habits, but it begins with a foundational idea that in order to be happier, have a better quality of life, or even perform better and be more effective, a lot of it comes down to our habits. Because I often say that the product of your life, your life is the sum total of your habits. I mean, really think about this. Think about any area of your life that you are very satisfied with and any area of your life that you're not so satisfied with. And I bet there's kind of a direct line or a direct correlation between your habits in each of those areas. If you're like, oh yeah, well, I am pretty fit and stuff and I stay in good shape and I'm pretty healthy, but I don't know, I haven't been doing as well in terms of learning new things or running the side business that I wanted to do. It's like, well, you probably work out consistently, but you probably don't have consistent habits around study or work, etc. And particularly when we think about habits, I think it's interesting to look at the etymology or the kind of the background of how the word works. So you have habit, which comes from habere, which means have or consist of, and habitus, which is the condition or state. So it's almost this idea of having or consisting of a certain set of conditions. So that's why I say, or you add up all these little habits, you basically get your life. So as I said, there's a fundamental shift though. I used the term earlier, habit engineering. And when I say habit engineering, I'll share a story that illustrates what I'm talking about here. And this was years ago when I was in college. The most popular bar on campus had a line way down the block. It was the night of the national championship. It's 200 people. The cover charge to get in was $100. And I was only 20 years old. And I was like, well, I got to get in there, man. I want to get in there so bad. I had all the motivation, all the willpower, and I knew exactly what I wanted. So how do I get in there? I'm like, could I pay the bouncer? Could I climb in over the back or just, do the old beeline straight through, try to charge them, see if they can catch me? I realized none of those were probably very good ideas. So what I did is I went over to this diner right next door, got a paper bag, takeout meal, threw on a baseball cap. I walked up to the bouncer and I said, hey, I have an Uber Eats for Sarah. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I have Sarah in the back. She had an Uber Eats. I don't know. And he's like, okay, go ahead. So I walked right in there and I was good to go. Well, what is that story illustrating? Well, it's simply a shift from motivation and willpower and desire to using your creativity to get the outcome you desire. And that's what I distinguish between habit building and habit engineering. And in this video, I'm going to outline for you some principles of habit engineering. So it starts with wanting to think about, okay, well, so what is your outcome here? What is the area of life that you do want to improve, right? That's where I would start. I'd encourage you to follow along with something as you watch this video. It could be exercise, it could be diet, it could be I want to improve my relationships, I want to read more, whatever. And it starts with this idea of first, make it count. And this means tying it to your identity and how you see yourself, as well as kind of raising the stakes and connecting it to emotionally compelling reasons. So a story for this, I heard the story of this guy who visited his doctor, and the doctor goes, "Hey, do you have grandkids?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, do you want to be around to like play with your grandkids and have fun with them?" And the guy's kind of like, "Weird question, but yeah, I do." And he's like, "Okay. And your kids, would you like to be involved in their wedding and kind of be there for that and be actually supportive and able to engage with them?" And again, the guy's kind of like, "Okay, yeah." And then finally the doctor goes, "And how do you like the thought of another man getting up next to your wife every morning?" And the guy's like ready to almost fight his doctor. And he's like, "Well, dude, what are you doing? No." And the doctor's like, "Well, if you don't lower these blood markers and cholesterol levels by eating healthier, exercising more, and improving your sleep quality, that's going to be the reality. That is what's at stake." Wow. So you can imagine how much more effective that was than if the doctor would have went in there and just said, "Hey, you need to eat a little healthier and, we could work on lowering your cholesterol." It's like, no. I often say that when you think about how psychology works and how human motivation works, right? A lot of times we make emotional decisions and then we use logic and reason to then justify the emotional decision we previously made. You can look at the work of someone like Dan Gilbert talks a little bit about that, or Nicholas Epley from UChicago. But what we're saying there is, emotion is kind of the reason and the motivation, the activator, and then the intellect is what we use to steer. Khalil Gibran, who's an author and philosopher, has a really great analogy where he says, emotion is like the sail of a ship, and then reason or logic is like the rudder. That's the thing that's used to steer. So it starts with creating an emotionally compelling reason for what's at stake, why is this important? And it relates to your identity and how you see yourself. There's a saying that behavior that is incongruent with the self won't last, or behavior that's incongruent with the identity won't last. So think about if I see myself as like, "Oh, well, I don't know, I'm maybe trying to lose a little weight and quit smoking too." Think about that versus saying, "I'm not a smoker, I'm an athlete." Sounds subtle, and I'm not trying to get too guru something here, but I believe it's powerful that we need to tie these statements to our identity, or similar. Think about the emotional investment. If I were to say, I think I don't know, I do kind of want to spend more time learning about this new subject so that I can maybe make a little money doing it, versus saying like, "No, if I learn about this and I really take ownership of it and I improve my financial situation, I'll be able to live life on my terms the way I want it for the people that I care about and for myself." A little bit more compelling. And what closely relates to that is identifying what's at stake. Again, emotionally compelling reasons. What are the consequences and benefits if you do it and if you don't follow through on it? So Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford University has some great stuff on this, and he referenced quite a bit of literature on a podcast on goal setting and goal pursuit, where he talks about using positive visualization if you feel some motivation. So if you're saying, "Oh, I do want to start writing more," and you feel some motivation to do it, positively visualize how you'll feel, how accomplished and happy you'll feel once you do your writing stuff. But if you feel no motivation, use negative visualization and think about what's at stake if you don't do it. Well, if I don't actually sit down and write consistently, I'm going to be a failure. And more importantly than a failure, I'm going to be a failure to myself because I didn't follow through on what I said. And that's just, it's creating that emotional association once again, if you do or you don't. So this first piece, right, what I recommend is just doing some reflection and tying it to a statement of identity. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? What is the type of person you want to be? And how does this thing you're trying to improve fit with that? And then what's at stake if you do or you don't? Okay? And that's just the start. The next piece, we're going to move through, there's about 5 of these. Next one goes together. Make an easy plan. 2 pieces there. Make an easy plan. You may want to write that down. Make it easy. Well, this is about trying to make it scalable. You have to have a habit or behavior in place before you can improve it or scale it. And I think a big mistake people make is they say, "I'm really motivated, I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to run 10 miles a day." And what happens is you do 10 miles the first day, that was pretty good. 10 miles the second day, not so good. Third day, you're in shambles. A lot of successful behavior change is from improving something called self-efficacy, which you can Google it. Essentially means the ability or the capacity to actually follow through on your intention to do things. And what's important to point out is self-efficacy has to be nurtured through repetition and iteration and repeated successes. Because every time you do the thing successfully, you're casting a vote for the new behavior where you're accumulating evidence that you can follow through on it and you're boosting self-efficacy. So if you think about someone who wants to read more, you could go out and just bust your ass for a whole day and read an entire book. Or you could just read 10 minutes a day. Easy peasy, but you do that for 2 months. In one case, you essentially accumulated one win, right? One iteration of that habit. And even if you read for just as much time, over 2 months, that's 60 iterations. That's 60 votes. So start with something very small and try to accumulate those wins. So scale this thing down to something very small. And now that's the second part, is making a plan of action. So this is all about taking what could be more of an outcome-based goal, I want to lose weight or I want to read more, and defining it in behavioral terms and attaching a plan of action to it. So first, start by thinking about if your goal or this area you're trying to pursue is an outcome, what would be the inputs that lead to that output? So again, I want to read more becomes I'm going to read a certain amount of time each day or each week. I want to lose weight becomes I'm going to do this exercise plan these days or whatever it is. I want to, even something that's maybe a bit more ambiguous, I want to improve my work-life balance. Well, maybe that means you're going to log off from your work stuff at a specific time, or you're going to spend more time with a certain person or group of people. So you want to think about defining it in behavioral terms, and then quite simply saying when, where, and potentially for how long you're going to do the thing. Alternatively, you can say after current behavior, I will insert new behavior. So if you say, I want to start being a little more active every day after breakfast, I will walk for 10 minutes. The other side of that is saying every day at 7:30, I will walk for 10 minutes. Either way is fine. But this is something called implementation intention, which there's really good literature on that says is simple. I'll reference a study that I believe is from Oettinger is the last name. Oettinger, not 100% sure. I can reference it after the video. Where they look at doing a breast cancer self-examination. And they had one group of women, they said, this is a life-saving treatment. You need to do it this week. Second group, they said, this is a life-saving treatment. Really important you do this. Can you just tell us when and where you're going to do it? And that group that simply set an intention had double or triple the compliance rates and follow through. So it's sort of like when you run into someone and you're like, oh, we should catch up, dude. Great to see you. Yeah, we should catch up. And then what happens? Usually you don't. You have to just simply say when and where, and potentially the duration is important as well. Because one thing to say, oh, I'm going to read every day at 4 p.m., but it's like, whoa, are you going to read for an hour, 2 hours? Scale it down. So what this means right here, this step in the process is trying to take what's some big general goal type thing here. I want to do more of this. I want to be more of that. I want to lose weight. I want to do whatever. Scale it down to something really, really easy that you can define a specific behavioral term and then make an appointment, schedule it with yourself, or layer it into your current routine of after blank, I will blank. All right, you with me? Cool, we got 2 more. Next one is change your environment. So when I lived as a Zen monk, it was actually really, really easy for me to go like 90 days, no drinking, no nicotine, fully vegetarian, meditating like 2 or 3 hours a day. If I were to do all those things right now, it would be, well, the nicotine would probably be easy, but otherwise it would be a bit of a challenge. All that changed was my context or my environment. The monastery, there was no meat because it was vegetarian. Everyone else was getting up at the same time, all going to the meditation hall. Once I was there, I couldn't just walk out. And then I had to like hike over a mountain if I wanted to buy booze. So it was really easy to do all that because of my context. Similar, if you think about being healthier in terms of your diet, having fresh fruit on the table and then not having a bunch of Halloween candy. That's actually a great analogy because last night was Halloween and my terrible influence of a roommate bought like 4 bags of candy because we thought we were going to have trick-or-treaters. We didn't have very many trick-or-treaters. So long story short, the night ended with me eating about 8 Reese's cups. And I felt pretty terrible. But what changed? On any given night, think about this. Any given night last week, I could have went to the store 5 minutes away and bought a bunch of Reese's Cup and eaten them. But it was the environmental trigger that supported that behavior. So your environment can be engineered to be more supportive, right? To encourage you to do the behaviors you want to do. So getting a gym membership, or joining group fitness classes so you have that social accountability, or having healthy food available. Conversely, you can make behaviors harder. So you throw away your Juul or your vape thing and you don't buy it. You clear the cabinet out of your junk food. You limit your apps on your phone. You delete some of them, right? All of these things are changing your environment to make things easier. Stop hanging around with certain people, maybe. So finally, create accountability, use tracking and rewards. So tracking system is simple as saying what gets measured gets managed. You need to have some system in place to track your progress and make it salient. And salience in psychology is basically just meaning like top of mind. So information that is salient means oh no, I did my habits today or I didn't do them. So I recommend a digital checklist. I have a checklist that I leave on my pillow every day of my daily key habits that I can check off before bed. Something to make your progress known to you. And as it relates to that, trying to reward yourself in some capacity. Now, this doesn't, you don't want to go crazy with this, but the idea is that a lot of our good habits have a long-term payoff and short-term sacrifice. The problem is our brains are evolved for immediate return environments. If you think about being out in the wild, it's like seafood, you go get it and you eat as much of it as you can. You see something dangerous, you run away and then you're good. But nowadays it's like, oh, I kind of want that food, but instead I'm gonna, wait till later, or I've got all this money that I want to spend on something fun right now, but I'm gonna save it for retirement. So this idea of moving those rewards forward in time so you get some intermediate pleasure to keep you motivated. So maybe that means if I hit 5 workouts this week, I'm going to treat myself to not like a junk food thing, but maybe like a nice fun dinner out. Or you say, I'm trying to save money. So every time that I was going to go to Starbucks and get a $5 drink, I just put that $5 in my bank. And at the end of the month, if I save up $100, I'm going to use 10 of that to go buy a bottle of champagne and celebrate. So you can start to think here, what are some sort of intermediate and immediate rewards as well? And then how can I kind of track this in a way that's consistent, whether it's reminders in my calendar, a checklist. It could be something physical, like you get a bowl and you put a piece of candy in there every time you complete a workout, whatever. So I'm pause here. I just gave you a lot of information. I'll run through it again one more time. And the fundamental idea is how can you go from willpower, motivation, desire to saying, I'm going to very strategically kind of engineer an environment and a plan that is supportive of following through on the behavior. So first you make it count, right? Tying it to your identity, really getting emotionally invested in following through on the behavior. Then you want to make a very easy plan, something scalable, something so easy that you never have to miss it. But then it's also very specific behavioral terms, when and where, how long you're going to do it, setting an appointment with yourself. And then you try to make your context more supportive, your physical environment as well as your social environment. So you getting your friends to encourage you, maybe not spending so much time in environments that aren't supportive of it. And then finally, trying to create accountability for yourself through rewards and a tracking system, because what gets measured gets managed. So there you have it. And this video was maybe a little less pulling from the specific scientific literature. I talked a little about implementation intention. A lot of this work draws on folks like James Clear and Charles Duhigg and B.J. Fogg. B.J. Fogg actually is a researcher at Stanford. All of them have a pretty solid grounding in my reading in literature and scientific evidence for behavior change. So I can try to include some of that in the comments. But anyway, I hope this was a very practical video, and I hope you can go back and follow along and think about any habit you have now, right? A quick example, say, I just want to read more. Okay, well, that becomes, why is that important to you? Well, I could say, well, it's because I want to be the type of person that really learns and grows so that I can give back to the people around me and improve my quality of life. And if I don't read more, I'm just going to be stuck and stagnant and just kind of blah. But if I do read more, man, I can really be like wiser, better version of myself. Make it so easy you never miss, and make a plan. All right, I'm going to read for 10 minutes each morning after breakfast. Change your environment. This is what I'm going to leave my book in my refrigerator, which sounds crazy, but why? Because every time I go in there, open the door to get breakfast, oh, there's my book, so I won't forget it. And then I'm going to keep my phone in the other room during that kind of morning period, so I'm not tempted to check it and get distracted. And same thing, right? So changing that external environment a little bit. And then let's see, rewards and tracking. Well, I'll add that to my checklist that I leave on my pillow. Did I read for 10 minutes today? Check it off. And then finally, kind of the reward for that, maybe I say, well, after I finish this next book, once I finish it, last chapter that night, I'm going to go get a steak dinner. So you can see now something that was very ambiguous is going to be really, really clear and not take that much effort for me to implement. It's still going to take some, but all I have to do is show up consistently, and I've sort of engineered a system that's going to support me to move towards my goal of reading more, and you can apply that to any area. So I hope this video helps you in the context of happiness and well-being to go from knowing to actually doing and following through. If you want more content on this, please do reach out. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.